Carol Beaumont.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, let me start by reiterating Labor's support for this bill, the Land Transport Amendment Bill. We believe that this bill is worthy of support because we have long sought to have the legal alcohol driving limit reduced, and this bill finally does that. So what it does is begins to address the problem of alcohol-impaired driving with a number of amendments, including lowering the adults' legal alcohol limits from 400 milligrams of alcohol per litre of breath to 250, or from 800 milligrams of alcohol per 100 millilitres of blood to 50. Now, this range, this 50 to 80 range, has been talked about for some considerable time, and others have alluded to various journalists and other, what you might say, stunts that have shown that drinking range and that level of alcohol is actually people being allowed legally to drive drunk, that people are sufficiently impaired that they cannot drive a car safely and are a risk on the road, a risk to themselves and other people. And that, I think, is generally accepted. I think most New Zealanders support this change. Most New Zealanders have wanted a lower limit for some considerable time. Now, I find it interesting that the last speaker has opposed this on the basis that somehow this is a less of a risk. You know, the number of deaths and accidents are lower, so therefore this isn't worth addressing. And I find that an extraordinary position to take. Acting on this issue of reducing the legal alcohol limit for driving and dealing with the particular concern that has been sitting there and raised over and over again for some time now does not mean that we should not take higher levels of blood alcohol levels very seriously, and in fact look at the sort of matters the last speaker has spoken about. Are the sanctions for those higher levels high enough? We certainly need to continue to focus on this issue. There are still people who continue to drive with excessive amounts of alcohol, and in fact what we can all see and know is that there is a terrible problem with recidivist drink driving, people who are seriously impaired, who have been even imprisoned, who get out and then drive again in that state. And what that says is that one of the problems we have, and this came up in previous legislation where we were talking about the blood alcohol limit, is that we don't use the opportunity that this provides for dealing with the issue of alcohol abuse. This bill hasn't dealt with the issue. Previous legislation around younger drivers didn't deal with the opportunity that is presented, that people who are pulled over and caught for drink driving provides a real opportunity to intervene and to provide assistance to people who have an alcohol problem. And in fact, many submitters to previous legislation said that this is the opportunity, because often people with a drinking problem, it will go unnoticed for a very considerable length of time. And in fact, often the opportunity to intervene and the first time that it might come to a family's attention that somebody has an alcohol problem is when they are picked up for drink driving. We haven't addressed that, and I think that that is a serious problem, because recidivist drink driving is something we all know continues. However, as I say, we support this bill. It's been a long time coming. It certainly was raised extensively when we were talking about the Law Commission work about alcohol in our lives, that comprehensive report that they did and which we looked at. Many submitters and many people talking to the Select Committee at that time raised the issue of reducing the legal drink driving limit. And then, of course, the legislation that brought in changes for drink driving for younger drivers. Again, the issue was raised there. Former colleague had this as a members' bill picked up by Ian Lees-Galloway. Considerable support. What were the reasons for not doing anything at the time? Well, others have said that the minister clearly didn't end up with the political will, despite initially showing an interest in progressing it. For whatever reason, we had all sorts of things said to the Select Committee, like, despite the fact that there was significant evidence from other jurisdictions about the changes and the improvements that were made by reducing blood alcohol levels, the savings of lives and reduction in injuries, we were told that we needed specific New Zealand research on the matter. Now, frankly, that just seems nonsensical to me. What is it that is so different about drink driving in New Zealand that would mean we had to have specific New Zealand research? The only thing at the time that people came up with was we had a lot more rural roads, and that was the reason why we had to do all this additional research. Now, finally, we are here. We have been out of step with almost every other Western nation. We do have some concerns while we're supporting this bill, and other colleagues have raised them, and it is the issue that the New Zealand First Speaker has outlined around whether the infringement regime is sufficient, whether it will work, whether that is pitched appropriately. Well, it is better for us to start at least and do something and make progress on what has clearly been a real issue and a real concern. In the period of time between 2006 and 2008, 30 people were killed in accidents where drivers were known to have a blood alcohol content of between 0.05 and 0.08. That's just the number of people who died. There would have been many serious accidents that were also within that range. And the costs, not only obviously of the death, but the cost to the health system with serious injuries, the emotional and other implications for families of those things, that certainly is worth us taking action, and it has taken far too long to do so. So we do support this. I guess we will want to see how the infringement regime does end up working. I know that my colleague Darian Fenton is likely to raise concerns from the time in the Select Committee on how some of the issues around payment for blood tests is going to work out, and whether that creates some sort of strange sort of set of circumstances, but I'll let her talk about that. I guess there's another parallel that really has struck me in looking at this bill, though, and I do want to just finish by talking about another matter, but also a matter where we know there's a need for action, where the failure to act is costing people's lives and is causing serious harm and injury to people in this country and cost to them and their family. And that is the issue of violence against women and children. We know that there's a need to act. There is a strong public support for taking action. Like this situation, we are well behind other Western jurisdictions in actually doing something. And so I say to the House, this is an urgent matter. This is an urgent matter to deal with the problems associated with domestic and sexual violence as well. And we can sit there and know there's a problem, we can sit there and know that there's things we can do and fail to act. And in doing so, people's lives are being lost. People are being seriously injured. There is a huge cost to them and their family and the community. So, just to finish, we are glad this bill is finally before the House. It is a pleasure to support it tonight here on the third reading. And I look forward to further action, particularly around eliminating violence against women and children.
Darian Fenton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs.